Hi, I'm Jeremy Bella with Seamless Project Management. This is the first of what will be a series of a few videos showing you how to use Microsoft Power Pages, which is their low-code tool for responsive web development. And I really like the tool. There's some really cool out-of-the-box features, but I'll also show you some of the customizations, the ways that you can kind of make it do exactly what you want it to do. So first video in this series will be setting up the environment and creating the Dataverse tables. So I'll go ahead and jump into that. So the environment, it's in the Power Platform. So if you go to either, any of the Power Platform tools, make.powerapps.com, make.powerpages.microsoft.com, Power Automate, which would get you there too. But if you click on the Power Platform, go to the Admin Center, and that's where we're going to start, because that is where we can set up environments and work within. Everything's gonna be connected within an environment. So I'm going to go over here to environments, and I've got quite a few here, but I'm going to create a new one because I want to kind of demonstrate from the beginning how to do that. So let's do a new environment, and let's give it a name, and let's call it demonstration videos. That's probably a good one. I don't need it to be a managed environment, and I'm not going to go into the details of what that means. And don't think I need a group. Region is United States default. That works for me. And I want to choose a developer environment for this one because that's what I'm using it for. Okay. All right. I think we're good there. So it's automatically going to add a Dataverse data store, which is exactly what I want here. So I'll do next. I don't want the sample apps and data. That actually is kind of useful if you want to do that. It's a cool feature there. But I think we're good there. So let's save that and let Microsoft kind of set everything up. And this is actually pretty cool. So you're going to have a professional web server or a professional database server, all sorts of things in this environment, and Microsoft's kind of setting that up for you. I will also show you just real quickly here. So if I go into this environment and go to settings, and then users, if you want to have other users within your Microsoft 365 environment kind of collaborate on things like this, you could add a user here, and so up here, add user, and just give them, so I can look over here and see manage roles. You also have to assign roles, so I'm signed up as a basic user and a system administrator. So if you give those same rules to the person that you add, then they'll have access to that environment as well. So that's setting up the environment. There's other ways to set up the environment, but that's a good one. Now, once you have that environment set up, you have to choose that environment from both Power Apps and Power Pages, and those are primarily the tools that I'll use in these videos. So if I click on this, I've got demonstration videos, and I can choose that. So now Power Apps has switched to that environment. I can do the same thing in Power Pages and switch to demonstration videos, and now it's got no active sites in this one. I'll create a site later, not in this video, but in a future one. Okay, and here I'm going to do everything in Power Apps. So again, I wanted to demonstrate that environment idea because all of the tools in the Power Platform can interact with each other if they're in the same environment. So if I'm in this demonstration videos environment, then the Power Pages site can get access to the Dataverse tables that I set up here. Now I can also set up Dataverse tables here in Power Pages, but I have to create a website first. So I prefer to set up and do my data functions in Power Apps, just because I think it's an easier tool to use for the data part of that. But I do want to mention that you can do most of this, if not all of this, in Power Pages. Okay, so I've got a fictional situation here, and I've drawn an ERD to kind of show you what it looks like here. So I'm a construction company and I do projects. And when I do a project, that project is done for a customer. Now I've got lots of customers, but I've also do lots of projects for the same customers. And when I do a project, I kind of want to know who is the primary contact of that customer for the project, and where's the location of the customer where I'm doing the project. Because I have a lot of customers that have multiple facilities, maybe spread out in even multiple cities. So I really need to know the location that belongs to the customer that the project is done on. So got kind of a complex ERD here, and I actually kind of like this, and it's loosely based on a real situation. Now the other entity I have in here is the user, and the user is the user in the system. So most of the time that I build applications, I need to interact with the person who's logged into the app at one point or another. So I kind of wanted to demonstrate that. So specifically, this user is going to be the project manager of the project. So I want my project managers to be able to log into the system, see their projects, update status, and things like that. So so that's kind of the fictional situation, and I'll show you how to implement that as we build the tables. So this is the basic ERD that I'm going to be implementing, and I'll go ahead and start doing that. I'm going to start with the ones that, well, let's start with the customer table. That's the easiest. Customer's not the many side of any relationship, so that's probably the easiest one to start with. And I'll show you why when I do that. So customer, I just need to add one attribute, which is name. So let's go to Power Apps, and let's go to Tables, and let's create a new table. And I'm going to use a custom table here. Now, Microsoft does have some standard tables, and it's a good idea to use those at times, but again, there's a ton that I'm not going to go into here because it's not necessarily the scope of what I'm doing. So I'm going to do start from blank, and I'm going to call this table customer. Now, it's going to have me do what's called a primary column here. This is the column that's going to show up if you use this in like a drop-down list or something. In another, where this is a foreign key. So I'm going to get this new column, and I'm going to name it name, and it says required. Now, one of the cool things here to know is that the primary column doesn't have to be required, and there's some tables that I create at times where it doesn't make sense to have a primary column, and so I could just create one, give it any name, and make it not required and never use it, and it doesn't matter. Now I can't change this to a different data type other than text. It's always going to be text for the primary column. I can create other columns that have different data types, but the primary column will always be text. So I'm going to update that, and then I'm going to save and exit. And it's taken a minute here, and I do want to mention that part of the reason that it takes a minute is that it's actually creating on the back end a SQL Server database within Azure and doing a lot of pretty professional things with that. So on the back end, you've got a professional database running, but you're accessing it through Dataverse. And Dataverse is kind of a managed interface for working with the data. And again, it's an interface I really like and think that Microsoft has done a good job with. So the downside of that is because it's creating a lot of professional things with that, it takes it a while to save sometimes. Okay, so now if I go to custom tables, I've got this customer table, and I can look real quick at the columns, and you can see it creates a whole bunch of columns just automatically, and every table that you create is going to have a lot of these. Name is the only one that I really defined in here, and honestly it's the only one I'm going to use, other than maybe the primary key. So every table is going to have what it calls a unique identifier, and that's a GUID that's actually used as the primary key of the table. So do know that every table is going to have a primary key, but Microsoft's going to manage that. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so there's the customer table. So now let's do maybe the contact table. So go back to tables, new table, create new table. I'll start from blank, and I'm actually going to name this one customer contact. The reason for this, and I use this in a class I was teaching, and there is a standard table called contact, and if I named this contact, it can make things confusing. So it's better to name it customer contact for now. Anyway, but that works. Okay, now for the display column, I'm going to make it last name. It'll be a single line of text and required update, and then I'm going to save and exit. Now you probably noticed there's interface for creating other columns in this interface right here, and I didn't use that. The reason I didn't use that is because it's kind of a limited interface that doesn't have as many features. So I like the interface better when you go into the table and then go to columns, because you have more options for data types and things like that there. So I'm going to go into my table, and I'm going to click columns, and I'm going to add the other columns that I had. So over here I had first name, last name, phone, and email. I've already got last name, so let's do a new one for first name. Single line of text, and I'm going to leave this one optional and save it. So it's possible that I could have a contact that's maybe a business, and so maybe I'll just put in the last name and not a first name. So I can leave that as optional. Phone number and email address were the others. So phone number and single line of text, and I can actually choose phone number here, so it's got that as a defined format, which is kind of cool. And I'm going to make that required. So I want the, when my users are using the system, I want to always have a phone number for the contact, and I always want to have an email address as well. So let's do that one too, email address. And again, this is another one that has that as a defined format, which is kind of nice. Make it required and save. Okay, so I've got all those columns that I wanted. I'm going to go back into just the regular table interface, and I'm going to go ahead and define a relationship. So according to my ERD over here, contact has a many-to-one relationship with customer. So this relationship right here. So contact's on the many side, customers on the one side. Each contact belongs to one customer. Each customer can have multiple contacts. So I'm going to come over here to relationships. I'm going to do a new relationship, many to one, because I'm starting at customer contact. And I'm going to do this to customer. And if I just start typing, it's going to come up. There it is, customer. Now I want this to actually be required because every customer contact should belong to a customer. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, so customer contact's done. So now let's do location. So go back to tables, new table, start from blank. I'm going to call this one location. And the primary column is going to be called name, and it will be required. And let's save and exit, and then I'll go in and add the rest of the columns using the other interface. Alright, so custom tables, locations here now, columns. Okay, so I'll do a new column for street address. And I do want this one required. Let's do another new column for city. Again, I do want this one required. Another one for state and required. And one more for zip code and make this one required. Oh wait, actually let's make that one optional. Forgot. Zip codes, my users may not always know the zip code. I'll want them to know the city and state when they enter a location, but zip codes, sometimes you have to look up a zip code, so make it easier for data entry. Other thing is I want to go ahead and add the relationship here. So let's go to relationships, new relationship, many to one, and this one's going to have a relationship to customer, similar to how contact did, and customer is a good name for it. Let's make it required and save. Okay. So now I've got three tables. I've got customer, contact, location. Let's do project next. So project's going to have two columns, or three. It's going to have a name, a start date, and a budget. Okay, so tables, new table, start from blank, and we'll call this one project. And the primary column is going to be called name, and we'll leave it as required. Save and exit. So I need to add the start date and the budget, and then I need to add all of my relationships. Okay, that one took a little longer to save. Okay, so projects, columns first, Let's add the start date. This one is actually going to be date and time and date only. Okay, and we'll make this one required. And then another new column, and this one will be budget. Make this one currency. And I'm going to leave this one optional, so when I start or when I enter a project in the system, I may not know the budget yet, and that's okay. All right. Now let's go to project and let's do the relationships. So I've got 4 different relationships here. So got one to customer contact, to location, and to the user. Okay, so let's do a new relationship, many to one. We'll start with customer. Okay, and I'm going to make that one required. Another new relationship, many to one. This one's going to be to customer contact. There we go. And I think I just want this one to say contact. So even though I'm naming the table customer contact, I don't have to make the lookup column display name that. So contact is more concise. I like that. Let's make that required. Okay, another new relationship, many to one. This one's going to be to location. There we go. And location's a good name for it. Business required. Done. All right, and let's make the last one, many to one. Let's make it to project manager. And so project manager is going to go to what I call the user in my ERD, but the way that Power Pages does is it actually uses a standard table called contact for the users who are logged into the system. Now it already tells me it doesn't like naming it contact because I already named something contact, and that was my relationship to customer contact. And I actually want to name this one project manager, so I'm totally okay with changing that name, because when I see this in a table or in an input form, I want to recognize that I'm choosing the project manager for the project, not a contact, even though contact is the name of the table that it relates to. I'm going to leave this one as optional, so sometimes when I create a project, I don't know which project manager I'm going to assign it to yet, and that's okay. So let's hit done. And I think I have all my tables. There is one more thing that I want to add. I want to add a calculated column in my customer contact table. And the reason for that is that specifically when I'm choosing the contact, I'd like to see their first and last name in one column. Also, when I'm displaying it in a table, I'd like to see it all in one column there. So let's do a new column and we'll call it full name. And for the data type, I'm going to choose formula. And I've actually copied the formula, wrote it earlier, and I'll paste it in the description of the video here so that you can copy and paste as well. But I'm using a trim function, and I'm taking the first name column and then a space and then the last name column. And so it's essentially putting first name space last name. But if you remember, I made last name required but first name not required. So if the first name wasn't actually entered, then it's going to put a space and then the last name. Well, I don't want a leading space on my displays here, so that's why I'm using the trim function, and the trim function is going to take out any leading or trailing spaces. So anyway, so that solves the problem of, the case where I may or may not have a first name. Okay, so the format's going to be text, and that's good, and I'll hit save. And that is the last one. So a couple other things I want to show you here. You can actually enter information into your tables directly in Power Apps if you want to. So if I go over to the customer table and it's got name, I can put customer name, and that will actually save a record in the Dataverse table. Now in that one I saw the field that I wanted to enter it into, but if in customer contact, what I'm actually seeing down here is the last name and then created on. If I wanted to enter a record in this one, I'm not seeing the columns that I actually want to enter information for. So if I click this little more, I can unselect created on. I kind of don't even care about that one, but I can choose the things that I would want to enter. So customer, first name, full name, email address, and I think phone number is the only other one. So I could choose the columns that I actually want to see here, and then I can actually enter a contact. So last name is contact, first name is maybe sample. Let's assign it to let's give it an email address, sample@email.com. Give it a phone number. Okay. And I don't know why it's not finding my customer. Let me look over here. So customer. Oh, it didn't save that record. Okay. So customer name. Maybe if I click into the next row, it will save that. It's kind of interesting. We'll say I don't play around a ton with entering information in here. Okay, so now my customer shows up there. And it didn't save my record here either, so last name is contact. First name is sample. Full name should, when it saves, it's going to fill that one in. Sample@email.com. Phone number. Okay, so now if I click into the next row, it's going to save that, hopefully good. And I can tell it saved it because it entered this calculated column. That only happens when the record is saved. So, all right, that's it for the first video. Next video from here, I will do the user entry forms, and you'll see it's actually really quick. I think it took me 40 minutes to do when I timed doing that. So, and that'll give me a website with data entry forms to add, edit, and delete information from all 4 of these tables. So, demonstrate that next time. And then from there we'll get into more customization. So, hope you enjoyed it.